coming up on the Lead Ministry Podcast.
So, the stump in the field. And so now you have two choices as the farmer. Do you, number one, go to the effort to unearth and literally dig up that stump so that you can have a little bit smoother sailing? Or do you just work around the stump and you let nature take its course and naturally deteriorate and decompose that stump? Those are the two choices.
And now your host, Josh Denhart.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Lead Ministry Podcast. So grateful. Bill, I'm so thankful for you, buddy. We have a lot of fun doing this. Hey, listen, I want to let the listeners understand and know, hey, this podcast literally is work. It just doesn't happen on its own. It is work, right. But it's work that I actually really like.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Me too. Me too.
So we're grateful for it. We're grateful that you're here and you're listening to it. Hey, I don't say this all the time, and I don't really ask that much of you as the listeners. Give me a break. But would you like us? Would you make a comment? It literally means the world to us and to the algorithm so that more people can hear this if you were just to do those very few things of take the time and leave a quick comment on an episode. So grateful for you guys. Today, we're talking about a very powerful concept that I call and I teach, which is called the stump in the field. Now, as people know, if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, we don't dilly-dally. We kind of get right to it, don't we, Bill?
Yeah, we do.
And so we're going to jump directly in. So the stump in the field. Now, I grew up in Iowa. Bill, you grew up in the Midwest as well, did you not?
I did. I grew up in Indiana and Wisconsin.
Okay, so you know the agrarian kind of life, right? And
absolutely.
So this is an agrarian analogy, and here's what it is. If you have a field, you are looking to maximize the amount of crops and the amount of rows of corn or beans or whatever you're happening to be farming that particular year. You want to get the most rows and the most ears of corn that you can get out of that field. It's called maximizing your field. Great. Mm-hmm. Well, lo and behold, the field that you happen to own has a stump directly in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. And because that stump is there, and by the way, this isn't like a twig. Okay, this is not like a 3-year-old stump. No. You just drive over the top of that, no big deal. This is like a 200-year, a bur oak tree that used to be there. Massive.
Yep.
And we're talking, a humongous stump, so much so that if you were to try to drive over that, it would ruin all of your equipment. So you have to go around it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the stump in the field. And so now you have two choices as the farmer. Do you, number one, go to the effort to unearth and literally dig up that stump so that you can have a little bit smoother sailing? Or do you just work around the stump and you let nature take its course and naturally deteriorate and decompose that stump? Those are the two choices. So you got a stump in the field. You're missing out on some tillable acreage because of this stump. And now you got a choice. Do you seek to dig it up or do you seek to go around it? Talk to me, Bill.
Yeah, I love already the analogy like rooted in agriculture, because I think you might think about one season, right? One growing season. You're like, oh man, this stump is here. It's in the middle of my field. I'm just going to go around it because I don't have time. I don't want to take the time, the effort, the pain of going in there, digging it up, pulling it out, removing all the things. And so you say, this season, I'm just going to go around it. And in the meantime, you've actually diminished your yield for that year, right? And so that, fine, one season. If I do this every single year, at what point is it more advantageous for me to remove that, to take the time to remove the stump rather than continue to go around it.
Yes. And at some point, the amount of lost harvest and the lost yield could be the equivalent of 1 year's worth of full harvest.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So you're always driving around this stump. It might be worth it for you just to take the time to remove it.
Yes. Okay. Now let's define what the stump is in this little analogy. So the stump could be several things. It could be a person, or it could be a program that is causing problems, or is causing diminishing returns somehow. Now I'm going to give a quick story. We had, and by the way, I have a program story and I have a people story. I'll start with the program story. We were a very large church, one of the largest churches in the Midwest, in our state, and we had a thriving VBS program. I'm talking, it rivaled. I mean, it was the thing, right? Well, I took over, Bill, and it was not a sustainable endeavor. It was 26% of our annual budget. That's a lot of money for 5 half days of programming.
Yes, that's huge.
Okay, so you got the financial piece that I had to look at. But then you had another budget, and the budget this time was not the financial budget, it was the human resource budget. And we were blazing through human beings, and we were spending all of our human capital on these 5 half days of programming. And then everybody was burned out so hard they were unwilling to touch Sunday school, which was our main discipleship endeavor for 52 weeks a year. So we were in a sense, hamstringing or cannibalizing our number one discipleship opportunity Sunday morning because people were being so fried and burned out. So it was a mismanagement on so many fronts. The list of reasons why we needed to address this is far longer than this podcast could hold. All to say, it was impingent upon me as a forward-thinking person to go, this is not a stump that we can go around. This is massively needing to be removed. And so here's the challenge. I'm not a VBS hater. I have 3 VBSs that I wrote, published, and are currently selling called Science VBS. It had nothing to do with whether I'm a hater of VBS. That's not the point. The point is this right and good for our local church context? And are we achieving the goals that we want to achieve with this particular thing that we're doing? And the answer was a resounding no.
Yeah.
So
did you remove it?
Yes.
And how did that go?
Oh, well, I went to the senior pastor with this mountain of data, and I said, here's the financial pieces. Here's the number of people that are coming back to our church. This is just not a good investment. And I'll never forget. And I had five key families, right? This could be like, we'll have a podcast or a course at some point about how to lead change in ministry and not lose your life or your job.
Right.
So, okay, that's another whole thing. But I cherry picked 5 really key people, and I called them on the phone and I laid out this data for them, and they're like, oh my word, kill this thing right now. And so then I went to the senior pastor and I said, hey, here's the deal. Here's this mountain of data that we did archived. We went back in time and found out who comes back to our church. And it is 1.6% of people who visited our church come back at least once, and 0.9% come back more than 4 times. So not the best return, right? And I'm a data hound. You know what I mean? So it was just absurd how much. Okay, that's another whole story. But it was like, I really went at it, and I showed him all this stuff, and then I showed him these 5 people. So number 1, I had the data, but number 2, I had some personalities that could back it. And these weren't chump people. These were heavy hitters that were going to, by the way, I don't count opinions, I weigh them. And these were weighted people. Okay, so then he goes, find 50. You go have 50 more conversations. But he was, dude, I was like, it's on. So then this is
like Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah.
Would you do it if? Oh my word, that is funny, not funny, but so this was it was a really hard uphill battle. But a lot of people were behind it. Yeah. A lot of people. And everybody felt that it was the right move. Now, this is the stump. The stump was a program that was causing an overall diminishing return. And we couldn't sustain this. And we couldn't meet the goals that we had if we didn't get rid of this stump. And so I'm the crazy person who came in and decided to take 2 barrels of a shotgun and kill the thing. What? Yeah. Okay. So, but here's this stump. Now, a 200-year bur oak tree, which is a massive tree which grows really slow and is super hard wood. That size of a stump, the amount of infrastructure under the earth that is unseen in the form of a root system is massive. And so let's talk about this. So all of a sudden, when I began to go, hey, we're going to remove the stump, then like an acre away, no, not an acre away, 600 feet away, little did I know as we were starting to move this thing that we had like an entire amount of unforeseen problems 600 feet away from where the tree actually was, because this was such a big thing that the root system was way further than I thought. Does that make sense to you?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so I now did not realize in my naivety and in my youthful zeal that this VBS program is extremely far-reaching, way, way, way deeper. And so as I began to pull out this stump, we had issues way over here that I did not anticipate, but we also had a massive sinkhole because of the volume of root system that nobody really knew was that big.
Right, absolutely. So you had some filling in to do as well.
Oh, dude. Yeah. So it's not just about, hey, let's remove the stump. I don't know if we all take into consideration what might happen if you remove that stump.
Right, absolutely. And it wasn't that you didn't need to remove it because you proved that you did. But there were just more implications to removing it than you thought there were.
Yes. And there were people that were offended and had really good reasons way off of the reservation. They were not connected with children's ministry in any way, shape, or form, but the root system somehow had touched them. And so it was, you in other words, the whole analogy of the stump in the field is you literally don't know how deep and how wide this root system goes. You just don't know what you're getting into sometimes.
Right.
And so don't be Johnny on the spot who's like, oh, let's start just tearing up stumps. There's like, it can actually backfire.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's another analogy, or not another story that I'm going to give in just a minute, that the best move was to work around that stump for a really long time.
Yeah. And that might be the case. Yeah.
That might be the case. So,
yes.
So the answer isn't always take out the stump. The answer is let's be really, really, really circumspect and thoughtful here, because there's probably more going on than you think, especially if it's a 200-year legacy type tree. Okay. So number one, there was a cavernous sinkhole after the VBS was taken out. Right?
Yeah.
And that's one big piece. Another one is that there were this thing, the issues that I had to deal with were far more far reaching than I had ever anticipated. So it's not just as simple as removing the stump. It is probably a bigger deal than you might think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's helpful. You want to go into something like this with your eyes wide open, knowing that there's potential to create the sinkhole or that it's going to be far reaching.
Yes. Here's a quick example. Slightly unrelated, but I think you'll get the story. So in our church, there was this one wall that had a hand-drawn mural that probably was awesome 10 years ago, but it's probably time to paint over it. Well, this sounds like it's straight out of the Bible, but it's not. But it has that proverbial type of ring to it. And here's the statement. Do not move an ancient boundary stone until you know why and by whom it was set. Don't move an ancient boundary stone until you know why that sucker's been set. And so rather than saying, hey, let's paint over this wall immediately, which was my first instinct. Like, this thing is gone in hours, right? I take the job, I'm like, crush that wall. That mural is dated and looks terrible. No. A better move is, hey, who painted that?
Yes. It's like the pastor's wife 10 years ago or something.
Right?
Yes.
And so what's the story behind that mural? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this person still goes to our church and they painted this, here's the backstory. It's like, that's a little touchier than just up and painting it.
Right.
And so this is not, you're not a banker who all of a sudden is just going to up and decide to change the decor. Nobody cares. At a church, do a little research. Don't move an ancient boundary stone until you know why it was set. And so all of a sudden there's another thing. Out in the atrium of our church, every year, there was this big, like nativity set that didn't fit. It was nice, it was quality, but it just didn't fit the vibe, and it was out there every year. And so I was just like, hey, what's the story with the nativity scene? And somebody kind of with hushed tones looked over their glasses and said, slow your roll. And I was like, oh, understand why an ancient boundary stone has been set. Okay. Well, there was a family who early on in our church had a tragedy where one of their children had passed away in a very, 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 very harsh and elongated medical tragedy. And the church was young, and the church royally rallied around this family in the most beautiful way. And this nativity set, which was extremely expensive and extremely elaborate, was a memorial, right, that this family had purchased. And every year it was, so don't be the ding dong who walks in and goes, well, that's stupid, kill that thing.
Right.
Right. And so that was now hear me out. That was a stump in the field that it needed to be addressed. It needed to be removed. What's the how long can you have that thing up? Maybe you can have it up forever, but is it worth a discussion? So then all of a sudden it's like, okay, wow. Be gentle, be cautious, be thoughtful about how you're going to remove that stump in the field, because it's going to touch somebody. Okay, you see where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have lots of stories like this.
Okay, so do a lot of other people. And so you got to be thoughtful, because it's not just about removing the stump. It's about the unintended consequences of touching that stump, or putting stump remover on it, or getting heavy machinery in to pull up that stump. It could cost you your job.
Right. Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
true. I mean, no joking around here. Okay. So that was the VBS. We did change it. It was somewhat cataclysmic, as you could think. It did require a lot of tools. It did require multiple family meetings where people came. It was a honking ordeal, man. I can't even believe we did that. So here's another one. There was a person and their spouse, and they were renegades. They were high. Okay, Bill, I have some lights in my little office here. Well, there are 30-watt light bulbs, and then there are 1,000-watt light bulbs. A 1,000-watt light bulb burns very, very, very brightly. But if you get too close to that thing, you're going to get burned. Am I right?
Yes, it's true.
So
these were 1,000-watt people?
Oh, yeah. Both he and her. They were highly intelligent people. They were highly connected people. And they were like straight up hardcore about the thing that they led.
Mm-hmm.
And it, do not even think about touching this. Oh, VBS killer. You come for this, we'll take you out. That's kind of what,
right.
Like, what?
Yep.
Oh, my word. And so they were problematic. They were not fans of mine. They were haters. They were mean. They publicly, I'm not going to get into it, but like it was not good at all. And from any outside person, they would say, they need to be removed immediately. Okay.
Right.
Well, in a moment of wisdom, I was like, I think that this would be cataclysmic for me to try to address this. They are too connected. They are too powerful. They are too intelligent, and they have a pretty massive following with the thing that they lead. I think even though I am missing out on tillable crops or tillable acreage for crops, the wisest move is to bide your time, because they're not going to be here forever. They have children who are of a certain age, and those kids are going to age out of the program. They may stay around for a year or two because of the legacy and they just love what they do. That's fine. But my choice on that one was to tolerate rather than try to extract.
I love that. That's so helpful for me, because I actually am I actually am known somewhat in our church for killing the sacred cows.
Oh, me too.
And so I'm like, with being a practical, more pragmatic person, I often am like, if it's not working, if it's not getting the yield that we need, like, let's destroy this thing. Let's start a bonfire, right? Burn it, right? And I think some people listening to this need to hear, you need to go ahead and remove the stump sometimes.
Yep.
And then there are other people who need to hear, wait a second, count the cost, think about what you're doing, do your research. Don't just assume that because you see a clear vision for this ministry moving forward, and this is an obstacle, that you need to remove it immediately without knowing what you're doing.
Preach. So it is both and. And so initially some people might be like, oh my word, let's go. Let's remove all stumps. Right?
Yep.
Maybe. And there's a balance to that, which is maybe touch nothing.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe plow around it. For the next 7 years. Right. Maybe what you don't know is that stump's root system is actually connected to the entire irrigation system for this farm. And if you pulled it up, you would ruin everything.
Brother, state that again. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And if I would have tried to take those people on, and I'm not going to tell the story, but it was egregious. And like, if I told you it peeled the paint on the office wall that you're sitting in, it's like, dude, are you kidding me? They did that? Yes. Yeah. And so there was very justifiable that I would say you have crossed some serious lines. That is unethical. You're not good people, whatever. Leadership wisdom said, okay, you better play chess on this one. This ain't checkers.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. And sometimes the thing is, you do need to wait out. You need to wait it out. You recognize that we're in a season where we're going to deal with this, and maybe there's a new season around the corner.
That's right.
Where we'll be more positioned to remove this.
Yeah. So a quick summary thing, which you already kind of stated. Not every stump is ready to be removed.
Right.
Not every stump is ready to be removed. And it may, and by the way, another thing, let's say that you have a program, not people. Let's say that you have a program and you're like, this thing needs to be addressed. We need to kill this. And it's like, okay, I'm the only one who's seeing this. And every time I bring this up, I'm getting pretty stiff resistance that this is a sacred cow and can't be touched. And so then all of a sudden, and I am a visionary man. I see around corners. I see hundreds of miles ahead. That's fine. Not everybody sees that. And so therefore, what I might need to do is to go, and this is extremely painful to go, okay, so we're going to have to all be present and watch this thing die a little bit of a slow and painful death. And it's got to, like, I know where this is headed. There is a precipice that this thing is going to fall off, and it's not going to be pretty. However, these 8 people, they all need to see that it's a colossal failure. So we're going to give it 2 more years. And on the beginning of the 3rd year, they're like, this is just not working. And I'm like, you think? I've been seeing this from a long time ago, but sometimes, and that's so painful for me because I'm a guy who wants everything to be excellent.
Right.
But the strategic move is to go, okay, have it your way. We will watch this thing come to a few more pain points until you come to conclude this thing is needing to be killed. Oh, yeah. Now it's emaciated and it has gangrene. Didn't have to be that way, but now we're ready. Okay, we're good.
Yeah. So this whole analogy with the stump is you could look at it and say, all stumps need to be removed. That's always my policy. We always remove every single thing that is hindering us in every single way. But what you're saying actually in this scenario is the stump in your field requires wisdom.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And the wisdom that I need to take into account is multifaceted, 3D, hyper chess playing.
Right.
This is not. So it takes wisdom. It takes into consideration people. It takes into consideration processes. It takes into consideration the elder board, your church polity, and whether this has to have a board vote, whether this has to have a congregational. Like, dude, I'm playing chess here. Okay. I'm going into this thinking through all of these things that I'm like, I think the wisest move is to do this, whatever. And so the answer isn't now the youthful zealot that I used to be. And I became, by the way, what is a reputation? It's time plus consistency of any behavior. Mm-hmm. I had the reputation, and I earned it quite loudly, that I was willing to kill anything. Mm-hmm. I slashed a couple of, here's another one just for fun. The Christmas pageant at our church. I was like, we're so not doing this. This is dead right now. And by the way, this was our executive pastor's wife's baby. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
So I quickly earned a reputation. He has a 6-shooter and he is not afraid to launch some bullets and to start killing some stuff. And so, then all of a sudden people start getting scared that I'm going to come after their thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
And so it does come down to wisdom. It comes down to people, personality. It also comes down to the long haul, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Do you have a vision for 10 years, or are you just a to and through kind of guy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen this often can happen during periods of transition in churches as well.
Yep.
Like you get a new pastor in, or you get a new leader over a certain area, and they want to rip out everything to start with. Mm-hmm. And that's really dangerous. So it's a good analogy for them too, because I've seen churches literally like just decimated from somebody coming in and saying, we're not doing this anymore. And it's like, well, you didn't know it, but a lot of the good things about this church were happening because of this one thing that we were doing. Yeah.
This is the root system is integrally tied around the irrigation system.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Like jacking with this one, you could bring the whole ship down, and now you have a field of weeds, no crops.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. Right?
Yep. So that's the stump in the field analogy. It truly has served people well across the country that I've done coaching with and training with, and all of a sudden people are like, just like you, like tell me if I'm wrong, but at the onset of this podcast, I think, Bill, you were like, sweet, let's talk about killing some stuff.
Yes, I definitely was. I was like, yes, that's me. I like ripping out the stumps. And then
Yes.
I was surprised to hear there's some times where you plow around.
For years.
Yes.
For years. Because you're playing a long game. And so sometimes it comes around processes, sometimes it comes around programs, sometimes it comes around people. But at the end of the day, put on your farmer's hat, be wise, be the wise farmer who's in it for the long haul. Well, gang, hope this has been helpful for you, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Lead Ministry Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and visit leadvolunteers.com for more episodes and resources. Thanks for listening.